I used Ollas in my raised beds for the first time this summer, and I wanted to give an update on how I liked using them, as well as give you some tips and mention some things that you might want to consider when using Ollas in your garden. For a quick overview, Ollas are an ancient watering technique using terracotta vessels that you bury in the ground and fill with water, and as the soil dries out, the water will seep out and water your plants at the root level. It's great if you don't run drip irrigation for whatever reason, and can help save water. However, there are a few things I should have considered to allow the Ollas to really work to their full potential. The first thing to consider is placement. For my larger square-shaped raised beds, I put them smack dab in the center, and I chose that placement because I figured a central spot would work best so they could reach all of my plants. But because these larger Ollas were in the center of my tomato beds, once the tomato plants got tall and spread out, it was harder to check to see if they were full, and it was also harder to refill them because I had to reach through all of that tomato foliage. I also should have buried them deeper. I should have taken into account that the soil level in my raised beds would settle, and they should have been buried up to the neck, so right about here. But if I had thought about the soil settling a bit, then I probably should have even buried it up to the cap level. As a result, some of the water in the Ollas didn't reach the soil and evaporated, so I had to just fill them up to the soil level so I didn't waste water. So that means I didn't get to fully maximize on the larger size that I got for these beds. And speaking of size does matter when it comes to Ollas. For containers and smaller raised beds, I think these smaller sized Ollas can be great, but even in my smaller raised beds with two of the smaller Ollas in them, on a really hot day, the water would evaporate quickly. So I'd have to refill them every day, maybe every other day, which kind of defeats the purpose of Ollas. They're supposed to last about 7 days, but during the hottest days of summer, I was refilling them a lot. My larger Ollas didn't empty out as quickly during those hot days, so I definitely think even one medium-sized Olla in a small bed would have been better. However, the larger Ollas do take up space, so the smaller Ollas are nice, and if you have a larger raised bed and don't want a huge Olla to take up so much space in one area, then the smaller Ollas could work well if you put some in every couple of feet in the bed, but on those hot days, I still don't know if the smaller ones, even if I had more of them, would empty out as quickly in a single bed, so that's something to experiment with next summer. And for the beds with the larger Ollas, it is possible that maybe I just had too many plants in each bed because while they lasted a few days longer than the smaller Ollas, during the heat waves that we had, I had to refill them every 4 to 5 days. But again, I didn't account for the soil settling, so it's possible they would have lasted a few more days had they been buried more deeply initially. And next summer, I do plan to not grow as many varieties of tomatoes. I am at a point now where I feel like I know what varieties are tried and true for me, so if I can have less plants in at least one of my larger raised beds next year, then I may keep the central location of the Ollas, but if I have a bed with the same amount of plants in it as I did this year, then I'll add some more smaller Ollas throughout the bed. So yes, I definitely still recommend using Ollas in your garden to water your plants, especially if you don't use drip irrigation. But I should have considered these things before I used them, but I'm always happy to experiment and learn.